Yes, people, it's LokiMan07 back with another YouTube video, a surprise YouTube video. I didn't know I was going to be making this video, but here I am making a video. Uh, I heard that this show was actually a good MCU show, so I've decided to dabble. And trust me, the bar is low, but I watched it all the way to the end. And yeah, what can I say? Um, there was a lot to unpack in this TV show. When season one of Loki aired, I made a breakdown called Loki TV Show Metaphors and Metaphysics. Okay, and I spoke a lot about the symbology that was used, the allegorical language that was used um, to represent aspects of the trickster in that show. In this season 2 of Loki, in this season, they doubled down on that stuff super hard and even confirmed that allegories that I used through art and translated it onto the screen. I will get into that stuff later, right? But as I always do, I always like to start off talking about dates and times, because dates and times have numbers and are linked to um, lords or deities, right? Ruling planets, etc. That may sound weird now, but by the time I finish, right, by the time I finish, you will understand completely what I'm talking about, because this show, like obviously being about Loki, is an ode to the trickster and the principle of Mercury. Okay, and I'll get into all of that. So first of all, Loki season one aired whenever it came out on the 9th of June, which is under the constellation Gemini, which is ruled over by the planet Mercury. Mercury is the trickster, right? Now, Mercury is used um, to symbolize three aspects, right? Mercury always represents three aspects. It represents the number one, which is the magician, the number two, which is, the number six, who is the lovers, and the number nine, which is the hermit. Okay, and this is all going to make sense. So first of all, I will give you some examples of how this is used, right? By the entertainment industry, okay, and how it is used in this show and how it has been used to develop Loki as a character throughout season one and season two. Let's get into this. Okay, so people, who is Mercury? Mercury, as I've described on this channel multiple times, Mercury is Hermes, Odin, Loki. Um, the list goes on. Uh, Tahuti, Thoth, Khonshu. He's those principles, right? That's the principle of thought, right? Intelligence, right? Trickery, speed and time, and the deliverer of the message, the divine message. All right, that's linked to the thought aspect as well, right? Uh, uh, Mercury is the magician god, of course. Now, let's look at how Mercury is used in the entertainment industry based upon tarot and of course the god Mercury himself. So let's first get into the most famous Mercury character, the Flash. Okay, so you've got the Flash from DC Comics, inspired by the god Mercury. How is he used in the entertainment industry? Let's look into this. So the Flash, the movie, was released on the 12th of June 2023 under the constellation Gemini, which is ruled over by the planet Mercury. This is ironclad, of course. Um, the the Flash is blatantly Mercury. Even other variations of the Flash have certain designs that link to Mercury, and the Justice League all represent um, versions of gods. As you already know, they're even called the new gods, etc. Um, and that's exactly what they represent, the new gods. They represent the Olympians, just like the Avengers do. Now, when it comes to the Flash, it's very obvious. Just like the planet Mercury, he's the fastest of the Justice League. Obviously, he represents speed, and if there is any oncoming apocalypse, right? It's probably most likely that the Flash is going to be the one to deliver the divine message.
She's the key! If I do soon!
So as you can see, that is a clip from Batman vs Superman, where of course the Flash comes from the future because of his speed abilities. He's able to act almost like a fifth dimensional being and able to move through the fourth dimension at will. Okay, so he can move through space-time at will. Now, if you're clocking to deliver the divine message, if you're clocking, that is what Loki does in this TV show. Loki season 2, Loki gets the ability to manipulate time and thus deliver the divine message, right? But we're going to get into that later. All right, let's continue with Mercury and the entertainment industry and how dates and times are used. Okay, so another, like I said at the beginning of this video, there are 3 things that represent Mercury: the Magician, the Lovers, and the Hermit. These are respectively the numbers 1, the number 6, and the numbers 9. So if you look out for the number 9 when it comes to Loki and stuff like that, it will pop up, right? So let's check how this is also used in the entertainment industry, starting with this, the number 9. Okay, so the number 9 represents the final stage of Hermes. If you look at the 9 card, the Hermit, it's an old man, and this old man is carrying a staff. An old man carrying a staff is supposed to represent wisdom, and of course, just to make sure he represents wisdom and enlightenment, he's also carrying a torch, which represents wisdom and enlightenment, right? The movie 9 not only shares its link to Mercury and Loki in the number, but of course, if you look at the movie number 9, the character design of this character, right, you can see he's just like carrying a staff, and also a torch, right, just like the Hermit card. Okay, but the similarities doesn't end there, because this movie was released on the 9th day of the 9th month 2009. Okay, now obviously there's 9 symbology there, but it goes even deeper, because the 9th month, the 9th day of the 9th month, falls under the constellation Virgo, right? Now, okay, Virgo, what planet is Virgo ruled by? Okay, so people, this stuff that I'm talking about, uh, um, release dates of movies, um, lining up with the zodiac, is ironclad. Okay, ironclad. not only does this happen with movies, as the video game industry is starting to consolidate into companies are buying up, the large companies that do this stuff are starting to buy up lots and lots of the market. um I'm starting to see it with video games, for example Cyberpunk, right? What's it called, Phantom Liberty, comes out under the constellation Libra. Libra is liberty. That alone made me play the Cyberpunk game. I will speak about that in a future video, maybe. Anyway, let's continue. If you want more examples, because this is ironclad, every time I talk about a TV show or movie on this channel, I do the exact same thing. So there is multiple examples of this. This is not a conspiracy. This is something that is happening, and it will tell you the themes. And now that the Loki TV show has ended, you will see, right, that the metaphors that I spoke about in the Loki season 1 breakdown that I did called Loki TV show Metaphors and Metaphysics, these metaphors that I was speaking about were visualized in season 2. So when I said that for example, when I said that the timeline represented the 2 trees from the Garden of Eden, okay, it's represented the 2 trees. He who remains, right, that's the thing, right? And the timeline represents 2 trees, okay? You got the tree of life, which, the circle of life. So as you can see, it's the circle, all right? And then you have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the expansion tree. That's what, when Eve, okay, so let's say Loki's Adam, and anyway, then you have Eve, okay? So Eve gets the knowledge. She's the one bouncing around the timeline, the trees. She's the one bouncing across the trees, getting the knowledge from the tree, and she imparts that knowledge to Loki, okay? And you get me? They release chaos. They release the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the chaos, okay? As you can see at the end of this show, the timeline was literally visualized as 2 trees. So yeah, we're going to get to that. So let's get into this Mercury aspect, right? Because this Mercury aspect, what I'm talking about here, it's not me, it's what the show is actually doing. Okay, so let's talk about the history of Loki, his appearance, how he has acted, etc., and how he goes along with the symbols of the tarot. So first of all, Loki first appeared in the movie Thor. Then he appeared in Avengers Assemble, and then Thor: The Dark World. In all 3 of these movies, Loki represented the number 1 and the magician, okay, right? And as you can see by the way Loki is dressed in those, he has a cape, etc. He represents the magician upside down, right? Because Loki is the Fool, 0, upside down. So this is the Fool going through, and as at stage 1, the magician. Loki is a trickster and a great magician. In season 2, he's also called a wizard by Victor Timely, right? I have broken down the magician, what it actually means. It means the thinker, the wise. The word wizard is linked to the word wise. Wiz is wise, right? So he's dressed in everything like a magician. His helmet with the 2 horns is also, those 2 horns are also on the symbol of Mercury, okay? Then after that, Loki is butchered by Marvel because he's hanging around as a mascot. So they just float him around as Zero for a while until they find out what they're going to do with him. So after those shows, Loki was just going around the MCU as its fool, right? And then of course he's killed as the fool, right? Then Loki dies. Then we see his spirit in the astral plane, the probability world, fall into the underworld, right? He goes into the next stage of Mercury, which is the number 6.
Another thing that Disney like to do, okay, is give you visual representation of tarot cards in their shows, okay, and we're going to get into the beginning of the show and its meaning. Okay, people, when I did my Loki video talking about He Who Remains with Sylvie and Loki, I mentioned something at the beginning of the video, and I said that the show represents the number 6, but I wasn't going to get into all that. But I'll get into it a little bit here, okay? The number 6 is the Lover's card, okay? And it has like a little artistic interpretation of the biblical Garden of Eden story, okay? So I'm gonna tell you something. If you look at the Lover's card, you will see that Adam is looking at Eve. That's his focus. But Eve is looking to the deity, okay? So in a biblical sense, that means that Adam is fixated on Eve, and Eve is fixated on higher thought, knowledge, wisdom, to be godlike, okay? In the Loki TV show, when they're sitting at the table, the whole show, the whole scene is that same principle. Loki himself is fixated on Sylvie, but Sylvie is fixated on He Who Remains, okay? That's what's going on in those scenes. If you look at them sitting at the table, it's like the Lover's card. If you look at how He Who Remains is dressed, it's also like the Lover's card.
Now, what do we have here? We get to Loki season 2. And what did I say the last stage of the zodiac is for the for Loki here and Mercury? It is the number 9. Okay. This is where all this wiseness, the magician, is encumbered with knowledge, wisdom, and age. And in this show, it was Loki was the wisest. He had the knowledge of a million lifetimes, just like He Who Remains. Okay, we're gonna get all into that, right? I said, and I have said multiple times that the virgin joke in the She-Hulk TV show, they just wanted to say the word virgin to represent Virgo. In this show, Loki wanted to talk about being alone to represent the hermit. As I have said previously, Mercury is Hermes, right? The Greek alternative is Hermes or Hermes, however you want to pronounce it, right? Which is the root of the word hermit. Okay, all this is linked. In the breakdown, in the blurb for Loki season 2, I mean, guys, this stuff is right there. Like I was saying, right? In the blurb for Loki season 2, okay, you see that Loki is described as Marvel's mercurial villain. All right, and all that mercurial means is either the properties of the metal Mercury or the characteristics of the properties, the metal Mercury, or you know, the personality traits of the god Mercury, right? Um, and I think we know which one they're getting at in this particular writings here. Um, Everything I'm describing about Loki is right there. Everything that I'm saying about the stages he went through, like I said at the end of this show, Loki is the divine hermit, the ultimate hermit, right? Um, and of course, is encumbered with the knowledge of all things. Okay, he's literally dragging it behind him, literally carrying the weight of it all. And I found this really interesting, especially since the allegory, they had the whole rings of the timeline in the original first part one of the series, and even I could tell then that it was supposed to represent the trees, and obviously He Who Remains was the snake in the garden with the apple for obvious reasons, right? All right, people. I'm going to move on from the principle of Mercury. I'm sure it makes sense. I mean, if you want to, with the information I've given you about the cards and things, you should be able to see very clearly what is going on here, just without knowing about the occult symbols of those things. But me just explaining, it's about the magician, the lovers, the hermit. You should be able to conceive with the naked eye. That's what you've been watching here, right? If you want another example, if for example, I say that Loki is the magician or the hermit upside down, right? A good example of the magician or the hermit, the right side up, is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is even dressed like how Hermes is on the magician card, okay? And then of course his most pivotal moment, where he's the key or the one to deliver the divine message. Of course, you see him doing the exact same thing as the Flash, as Loki in this show, where he searches through all of time and probability, all probabilities, right? Of course, the Eye of Agamotto was turned into the Time Stone in the MCU. That's because, like I said, way back when I did the WandaVision, the WandaVision talk, when I did the original season 1 of the Loki TV show video, when I did those videos, I said that when they convert comic books into movies, which the comic books are inspired by the gods, of course, but it's expanded. They shrink it for the movies and just do the principles of the gods and cut out everything else, cut off all the fat, because it's impossible to do the comic epic. So they're shortening them into stories of gods. That's why some of the characters and some of the things they have are almost unrecognizable. Why does Doctor Strange have the Time Stone instead of the Eye of Agamotto? Because he represents in the movies Mercury completely. He does in the comic books, but they're just hitting home in the movies. Like I said, to cut off all the fat, it's just Mercury, god of the mind. So Doctor Strange is intelligent and learned how to be a magician super fast. God of speed and time. He has the Time Stone, right? And this is the same with Loki. Like he's a flip of Doctor Strange. So in the Avengers, the stone that Loki had was a stone of the mind instead of a stone of time. All right. Okay. All right. We in there. if anybody watched my breakdown on the Moon Knight TV show, and when I was speaking about Khonshu, who represented Mercury in that show, you will see that Khonshu was also doing the same things, messing around with time and also being the most intelligent man in the room. He had the divine message, yo, Amut is coming, the end of days is coming. He's always the wisest. He always has foreshadowing, right? You can always check reality itself, time itself, right? Those are the things to look out for. There's somebody on my channel that asked about, you know, he thought that Captain America always represented Hermes. I'm thinking the only reason why somebody would think that Captain America represents Hermes is because of the hat and the helmet, the wings on the cap. And then, of course, if you're watching the MCU movies, Captain America runs a lot, which people associate with Mercury. But no, Captain America's running and his feats represent superhumanism. It represents being good at all sports because he is the champion, Aries or Mars, right? Right. Hope that makes sense. I can't remember your name, but I'll put a clip in the video. I'll put a screenshot on the screen as I'm talking. A new subscriber, I think, or maybe they've been here for a while. I don't know, right? But let's continue. Let's talk about He Who Remains, who represents the god Saturn. Every time I make a breakdown, whether it's Final Fantasy, whether it's Persona, whatever I'm talking about, the god Saturn is always there because he represents the keeper of time. Every time you're going for a video game, every time you're watching a movie, right? The thing that sets everything into motion is the god of time and space itself, Saturn, who's always the final boss, all right? You will see this. But in this show, they really went home with the Saturn aspect. Obviously, He Who Remains is clearly God, all right? God, the demiurge, all right? Demiurgus, right? Okay, and the how you can tell is that he's fooling them in the when he was fooling Sylvie and fooling Loki, right? He was the guardian of the trees, right? He had an apple in his hand the entire time, just to, you know, any viewer with a bit, you know, with a bit of foresight, with a bit of understanding, you can clearly see that he represents the snake in the garden.
However, not every...
And the whole scene with him talking to Sylvie and Loki, which they go back to in season 2, is all based upon the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life, right? All right, people, I'm going to end this video right there. If you find this stuff interesting, like, comment, if sub if you haven't already. I always say that. It will inspire me to make more content for this channel. This is my hobby. I'm not actually a content creator, but I've been away from YouTube for over a year, almost a year and a half, and I have had quite a lot of subscribers in my absence. Thank you for anyone who has subscribed. It has inspired me to make this video, and I have a few videos in production that I want to drop. I want to drop a few videos that I promised in the past, and I have a lot of new stuff to talk about, like video games like Expedition 33, Baldur's Gate 3. If you want to hear the occult aspects of those games broken down to autistic detail like I do, be sure to like the videos. Like I said, thank you to everyone that has subscribed. This is Loki Man 07. Peace.